especially if it's not like an important commodity in that
Yeah,
sense, right?
right.
Where
Like if I don't know, video
the
games,
government's not
right?
going,
Like
yeah,
yeah, something like that, where it's just
yeah, even though it's a massive industry, but it's not like essential, so
yeah,
they
right.
kind of just leave it to do its own thing,
Yeah,
right?
your luxuries, like you said there, right? That you can kind of a lot of luxuries tend to be in a market slash mixed economy. Um, those are where the free reign is, but then those basic necessities are where we're going to have to focus on. Okay, government might step in, but you also have countries like I mentioned, the United States, that don't do that, right? That don't regulate, or they regulate
Oh yeah,
things
or
in
even
a
different.
not like the cost or like price of things. It might be like a carbon
Yeah,
tax. You can make the argument is regulation, or like you can't dump your toxic waste into a river type of situation. That's obviously
yeah.
regulation, but that's not regulation on price. That's not regulation on
And it can also
production.
depend too on like availability of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So they might regulate lumber if like supply of lumber is strict, but if the supply of lumber is not strict, they might not really regulate it as much because they're not too worried about like no, it's flowing, so you don't need to worry about the supply not being there
Yeah,
regardless.
that's a really great point. That sometimes it's a temporary measure that becomes like a mixed economy, whereas
Yeah, or it'll like or the commodity just becomes not important anymore, so like it just doesn't get regulated anymore, kind of thing, because it's
sure,
like
yeah.
nobody's
Let's
like
say
right
we
times
we
change or
advance into the future and we have the equivalent of like an arc reactor that like energy is just endless supply. Well, it doesn't really matter that government has their hand in it because
yeah, it's
energy
like
is
go pick your
unlimited.
energy
Yeah,
supplier.
it's essentially free, right? Yeah,
Yeah, it's all coming from the same stuff. It's just dyed
yeah,
different color. That's all
yeah,
it is.
yeah.
Yeah.
Too funny. But yeah, hopefully that kind of between obviously, yeah, your traditional is a little bit more of that kind of on its own where resources are scarce. It's really just focused on those
Yeah.
basic necessities of life. And then your planned in and market, those are really the kind of two sides of the coin. And then mix is the whole coin where you can have a hybrid approach where government steps in to control certain things, whereas the rest of
Yeah.
the goods and services that are produced in a given
Or kind of just love
economy
to. Yeah.
are just free reign from how much money and how much demand is there, right?
Yeah.
Based off of supply.
Like, yeah, I'm sure when we were growing up, Pokemon cards made up a small percentage of the GDP here.
I'm
Which,
sure in
like,
many countries of the world, Pokemon cards
that
made
was,
up
yeah.
part of the GDP.
Yeah. But obviously that changes with time,
Well,
right?
so there's a good example though. The GDP of I apologize if I'm wrong on this, but isn't Pokemon Japanese, correct? Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I was like, am I wrong in that? But yeah, so the GDP of Japan, part of their GDP would be the exporting of something like Pokemon cards and Pokemon as like the TV shows and all that stuff. So the value that they got out of that product contributes to.
Yeah.
I think I didn't necessarily mention it in this recording, but the GDP, right, gross domestic product,
Product.
right?
Yeah.
That's the value of goods and services within a given region that were sold,
Region.
right? Or to a degree produced. Like it,
And it's like we're saying, like you can look at that at like, I mean, like a city
mm-hmm.
size level or like a county or
100%.
province
Yeah.
and then up.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah. The economy of Ontario is very different than the economy of Saskatchewan. But if you're looking at the economy of Canada, well, the economy of Saskatchewan and Ontario, as well as everywhere else in this country, are all kind of come together to give a value, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I know we've maybe it was quick, maybe it wasn't, but I know that was a somewhat quick synopsis. The only other thing that you can maybe add into there where that I don't want to go too deep into this because it's their own kind of conversations, but like capitalism, of course, is an economic system, right? So you can have capitalism technically in a planned economy. You can have capitalism in a market economy. The way that they differ is that you still can have, like, this is where again it's a little bit of an asterisk because most people would say you're not really having capitalism in a planned economy, but you could have where a government controls what is produced, but the citizens pay for it on a capitalist level, where it's like a supply and demand aspect of, okay, the value of this, but the government decides, hey, this is the TVs that are out there. These are the TVs that are produced. That's a random example, but you know what I mean? These are the TVs that are produced. And then the market, from a more capitalist scenario, is going to decide, hey, this is the value of it, and we're going to pay for it that way. But yeah, obviously from economic systems, a communist system is an economic system. Capitalism is an economic system. The barter system is an economic system, right? It's how we facilitate trade, going back to that original kind of definition, right?
Yeah.
So again, I know we've kind of ripped through those relatively quickly, but I think for a lot of people, they have a general idea, and hopefully this just maybe cleared some things out and didn't confuse you more. That's always my hope, that I haven't confused people more. But I guess going off of that, and this is where I kind of want the conversation to go, is really looking at, why do those things matter? Why am I even telling you all this at the end of the day, right? What's the point of understanding the difference between an economic system versus an economy, right?